Hello, welcome to Bring It On Z Movies, Zambia's #1 film magazine and only on Prime TV. This is a program that looks at the Zambian film industry. On this program, we get to see the trailers of the movies that the Zambians are making, and we get to have a chance to interview them in the studio as we have a close and personal interview with the producers, the directors, or the actors of the very movies. Well, this is also the only program in Z that gives you hints on filmmaking. What are we talking? We are talking movies, and we are talking Zambian movies. Today, please sit and relax, because on the show, on the trailer segment, we're going to show you one of Zambia's symbolic historic movies, because we are talking about a name, a great name in this nation. A name, when you're talking about Zambian history, that's a name that you cannot miss out from that history. So if you are interested in the history of Zambia and you're interested in the future of this nation, you sit, relax, and get to see what we have on the trailer this evening. Well, we're talking movies, and we are talking Zambian movies on filmmaking. What topic do we have today? Like all the weeks, today is another interesting topic, as we'll be looking at wardrobe. Some call it costume. So it's wardrobe, costume, makeup, and hairstyle. These are things that may look simple to a filmmaker, or things that they may not consider as major because they may be looking at camera, cast, and all those things, and overlook makeup and costume. But it's a very important aspect of filmmaking, because costume and makeup make or contributes a great deal to the overlook of the film. Let's take, for example, if we're going to have a doctor in the movie as a main character, and they come dressed in an overall. Before we even tell you that they're a doctor, you won't know that they are a doctor because of the wrong costume. So it is very important that as filmmakers you make sure that the person who's in charge of your wardrobe makes it a point that everybody, every actor is dressed appropriately, according to their role, according to the whatever it is that they're doing in the movie. Well, in Zambia, actors, because of the nature of our industry, may use their own costume, but regardless, it is also important that the person that is in charge of the wardrobe makes sure that continuity is followed, especially if it is a series. Series are those programs that you watch this week, the other week, and the other week, and the other week. But even in a one-off movie, it is important that if you're wearing a particular costume in one scene which has a continuation into the other scene, it is also important that the person that is in charge of wardrobe makes sure that starting from your hair, your earrings if it's a woman, your shoes, everything stays the same. So a person to do wardrobe is as important as the man who's handling the camera. Let's take, for example, in one of the movies, a guy had to shave off his hair before we could even finish producing that movie. So people had to wait for 2 weeks to make sure that his hair grows to continue with the movie. So costume, wardrobe, makeup, hairstyle are as important to a film as anything else, as camera, as a cast, as anything that you may consider more important in the line of filmmaking. I hope you've got one or two things on today's topic. Well, if you've got a question, you can first like our page on Facebook. It is Bring It On, or you can just write us a WhatsApp on the number that you're seeing on the screen. Alright, we are talking movies, and we are talking Zambian movies. Now I've come to the most interesting part of the program, and this I always look forward to, and this is the time for the trailer. Like I said, we are going to review today an historic movie, a great movie, a symbolic movie for Zambia as a nation. We are talking Nkumbula. I'm sure some of you are saying, Nkumbula. Yes, that's the man. And this is a movie one of Zambia's great filmmakers has just got out and said, I'm going to do a story for Zambia's history. And please sit, relax as we check out Nkumbula.
In 2016, Zambians will go to the polls for the 15th time in the nation's history. That year will also mark exactly 100 years since the birth of the man who got the country her independence.
He was Zambia's finest politician by a mile.
One
of the most political geniuses.
He was a very focused person.
Politically, he was principled.
He was a very considerate man.
As a leader, I think he was exceptional because he was not selfish.
He understood the damage which colonialism had done, not just to our status as a country, Northern Rhodesia, but also to the mindset of a lot of the black people.
Harry.
Today, Kenneth Kaunda basks in the glory of the accolades for Zambia's independence, while the true hero of the independence struggle lies here, forgotten by the nation that owes him so much.
I'm sure some younger people, I would guess that 14 or 15-year-olds in school would look at the newspaper and say, who's that, who was he? You know, outside Southern Province, you know. Little schoolboys, even in Mufulira, never mind Ndola, who was this man? Because of the big man interpretation of politics, because of 27 years of the big man Kaunda, and then some big men later, some of them being very little big men. Now, the original founder of the nation has been lost. Insofar as it's been remembered, it's been denigrated, that he fluffed and messed up and these other people had to take over and sort things out, you know. They have become the writers of history or the interpreters of history.
So, what is the truth about Zambia's independence struggle and Nkumbula's role in it?
He was the one who set us off on the road to independence. He conceptualized it, he imagined it, he thought it, and he saw it, and he gathered other men around him to help him do it.
He was larger than life.
Today's historical anomaly is that Kenneth Kaunda unified the disparate tribes in the nation. The history here couldn't be further from the truth.
Chris Mukkuli, can I say the great?
No, you can't.
Why not? Good to have you here again in the studio.
Thank you.
Thank you. It means you are working. You're working very, very hard.
Yeah?
Yes. We've just seen this great trailer, Nkumbula. Tell us about it.
What do you want to know?
What made you, of all the people, why this particular individual? I know you can do symbolic movies. I've seen you do that.
Yeah, Nkumbula. It's a question of where to start. Where do you begin? When you're talking about such a big, historical figure as Nkumbula, it's something that it's a movie I've wanted to do, for a long, long time. I think my fascination with Nkumbula started when I was still a kid, growing up in the village, hearing about all these stories about the man and, what a legend he was, how he could fly to London without getting on a plane. I mean, not London, London. Although when I was growing up in the village, it was England, because, in Tonga, England is, the UK is always England. So yeah, my fascination started there, and then when I went to school, there was barely anything, I learned about him. And in 1997, when I was working for Society for Family Health, I don't know, my interest was kind of rekindled. I don't really know, I can't explain some of these things. But it was around 1997 when I started thinking, I need to do a documentary on this man. And then in 2011, I came across a book written by a British professor called Dr. Giacomo Macola, called Liberal Nationalism in Central Africa, a biography of Harimanga Nkumbula. Fascinating book, fascinating read, you know. Because this man came from the UK, he was given some money to help, kind of catalog the materials in the National Archives. And when he was doing that, he says, he kept coming across the name, Nkumbula, and he got interested, fascinated by it. So he started reading up on Nkumbula from the materials that were available in the National Archives and also the Mukuba Archives in the Copper Belt, and then the UNIP Archives. And that's when he says, he got so fascinated and he decided he was going to write a book on Nkumbula, and he did. A very good book.
Very good
I
book.
recommend it. And he gave me a copy, which, he said I can distribute an e-book.
Okay.
So anybody who wants that, can just get in touch and I can email them a copy of the book.
Of the book.
It's an interesting.
Definitely. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of, requests. But you see, what I like about this is not just because you've done a documentary or movie on Nkumbula, but we need to start telling our stories.
Yeah.
To me, you've got a notch higher, because you've stepped out from the usual stories, usual life stories. I've seen people in America, in South Africa, they've been able to brand themselves as a nation because they've given us a face. They've given us a picture of who they are, and you're only who you are because of where you're coming from.
Yes. There is actually, that's a very interesting phrase. To know today, you need to search yesterday.
Yes.
That's very true. That's really, really true. And when you're talking about Nkumbula, one of the things you have to bear in mind is he gave us Zambia.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. If you're talking about the history of the Northern Rhodesia, or the history of this nation, where we came from, from the colonial period up to where we are today, I can say, and upset a lot of people saying it, but there is not a single person in the history of this nation who is as important as this man is to the history of this nation.
This nation.
Yeah, it's as simple as that.
Okay, I know people need to come and watch or need to ask you for the ebook, but in your own, just tell us just a bit about this man, especially for the young generation, probably that are not even so keen about our history. Who's Nkumbula? How did he affect the liberation of Zambia?
Nkumbula was born in a place called Mala, near Namwala, in southern province, in 1916. And then he trained as, he went
Did you say 1916?
Yeah.
So what are we saying today?
100 years ago.
Okay, are you also making history? 100 years ago, Chris Mukkuli did a documentary on Nkumbula. All right.
Yes.
I'll win a Nobel Prize.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but he was born 100 years ago in Mala, and then he went to school at a place called Kasenga Mission within Namwala. Then from there he came to Kafue, which was Kafue Methodist Training Institute, where he did his further education. And then after that he went to Makerere, and then he went to London to study for a degree in economics, and when he came back. But the interesting thing is, when he finished his training at Kafue Institute, there were so many stories written about, this young man. And when you just realize how young he was when he's the one who started the whole struggle for independence. Now, that's not in itself it's not really nothing. It doesn't really tell you anything. But when you think about how old he was when he started that, then you start to realize that, he must have been something.
How old was he?
He was 22 years old.
And he started...
And when you go to the National Archives, this is something that, when you talk about it like this, it sounds like, somebody is a fanatic
follower,
idolizer. But National Archives has all the records. You go to the National Archives, you look at the newspaper stories from the time, 1940s. You read the intelligence reports, which have been declassified and are now available, the intelligence reports from the colonial government time. And you find that, all those intelligence reports basically were just talking about Nkumbula and how dangerous the government considered him to be. And you're talking about a young man, in reality, by that time he was about 24 years old. They had made him headmaster of Mufulira Secondary School when he was 24 years. Not secondary school, African school. Mufulira African School. So they posted him there because he joined the colonial government teaching service. Then 24 years he was headmaster of the school. The first African, to be given that kind of stature. He was one of the most educated anyway at the time, educated Africans. And then 2 years later, they promoted him to Kitwe, where he became headmaster of a school that had 1,800 pupils and 36 teachers, which was a monumental promotion, considering, his age. But the interesting thing is that he used that as a platform for him to start, inculcating political awareness among the northern African, the northern Rhodesian Africans at the time. And also, interestingly, some of the things which you will not see in the documentary in much detail, they are mentioned but just in passing, is that he was so passionate about the education, and he kept talking about how important the education was to the future of the nation. And he lived this throughout his time, even when he was in politics after independence. Nkumbula's main fanatical pursuit was, improving the education of the Africans in the country. He got in trouble with the colonial government because of his, stance on politics, and he kept writing papers on education of the Africans. And as you see, when you watch the, there's a lot of stuff that he did that just put him in trouble. Up to the time he got fired from teaching. So it's fascinating. His life is absolutely.
If Nkumbula was so instrumental in the liberation of Zambia as a nation, which time did he's a good Samaritan that he handed over power to Keke, that he didn't rule this nation?
Well, it's fascinating. The interesting thing with that is it's a convoluted history. The question people need to ask is why, if he was, yes, like you say, he was that important, why is he missing completely? He's not in the syllabus, the school curriculum. He's not there. I have to ask, but why? But the answer is history is written by the victor. Kaunda was the victor. He wrote history. If you read, Kaunda's book, Zambia Shall Be Free, he dedicates 2 chapters in that book talking about how bad this man was. If you go to the National Archives, you will find catalogs of, the unique catalogs that they printed about, they titled the Nkumbula's political masturbations. And in that they listed, a whole series of things, bad things that he did. Nothing good. So if you are a Unipist or someone who's been reading the Unip narrative, the only thing you know about Nkumbula, which is what most of the Zambians who are old enough to know anything about him know, is that he was basically, a sellout, he was a drunkard, he was a womanizer who didn't do anything for this country and in fact delayed it. But the history is actually somewhat very different. Your question, he... Nkumbula, from a very young age, even when he was a little boy, I told you he went to Kafue Methodist School. And then from there, after he graduated, the government had set up, the colonial government had set up a surveyor's school in Livingstone. And what happened is that they sent word around the country that they were looking for intelligent pupils to enroll in the surveyor's school. And Nkumbula was recommended by the Methodist school, so he was one of the first students to go to the surveyor's school. But he got into trouble because he joined the cadets. Yes. And one of the things was that African cadets were not allowed to wear shoes. White cadets were wearing shoes. Africans were not allowed to wear. He had problems with that. And he got into arguments, and one time he almost knocked down a man called Captain Bashiko, who was in charge of the cadets. He almost knocked down the man with a knob carry, so he was arrested and put in quarantined for like a week, living on bread and water. And when the week was finished, he was expelled from there. And this is a boy who was at the time just basically a teenager. So he started fighting for Africans' rights even before the actual fight for freedom
started.
Yeah. You know, he was just a little boy. But because even when he was in school, he got expelled from Kafue Methodist several times for the same thing. You know, fighting for the rights of the African pupils that he was in school with. So he had that passion, you know, to try and improve the welfare of that, and he carried that on. So what happened now is that when in the 1940s, that's when he actually really started the fight for actual independence. So when about 1945 or somewhere there, there was a meeting that he held. You know, you see all this.
That's what I want to say. You're going to preempt a lot of people need to see, but I'm sure they got together with Kaunda at some point.
He actually is the one who brought Kaunda into. Into
whatever
politics.
liberation and politics.
Kaunda was his secretary at the time. He was the African National Congress president. And so he's the one, and Kaunda was a fervent supporter of Nkumbula, at the time. But what really happened was, in 1958, so he was leader of the African National Congress up to from 1952 to 1958, with Kaunda as Secretary General. But you see, what happened during that time was the government, the British, not the colonial government, but the British, because the negotiations for independence were not really with the colonial government, but with the British government.
The Britishers.
Yeah. So the British government decided, okay, we're going to give these people their independence, which infuriated the colonial government here, because they wanted to continue running, the country and be independent. So that was clear that the British, Britain was going to grant Northern Rhodesia its independence by 1958. So what happened at that point is the focus now changed from independence struggle to who is going to be the leader of the independent nation. Zank broke away at that point and set up which was Kaunda, Kapwepwe, which was also the clique, and then you had Munukayomba Spalo. That's how they broke away and left, and formed the Zambia African National Congress, and they put Kaunda. Actually, interestingly, is this part is not in the documentary, because the documentary is not about Kaunda. You have to remember that. It's about Nkumbula. But what happened at that point was that these freedom fighters, who broke away from the ANC, they couldn't agree amongst themselves, because there were losses, there were members who had come together, and they were Easterners. So amongst themselves, they started squabbling now on who was going to become leader.
The leader.
So the unity that has...
So is that the focus of the documentary?
The documentary, that's why I'm saying this part is not in the documentary. Yes, so I'm just explaining.
It sounds interesting. I wish this part was interesting. Okay, right. I know you can explain a lot, and you're going to preempt. But what is what did you want to achieve with the documentary? What did you want this documentary to do?
It's just to give him, his rightful place in the history of the independence struggle. Okay. I think that's period, really, all I was trying to do.
Okay.
And I can say I'm pretty happy with the final product. I think it does achieve that.
Okay. I'm sure you're not related to the man.
No.
But how was, in your preparation to come up with the documentary, any contact with the relatives?
Yes, his daughter was quite instrumental. I must say, we began. We did this, it was a team of 3 people, as you see from the poster. Chama Kapata Moyo, the producer, she's Bemba, and then there's Bulongo, who's my son. So it was basically the 3 of us. He was doing camera work. I was also helping with the camera, even though I was playing other roles. So no, I'm not related to him, but
you've worked with the idea. Why I asked is that I want to. The family, this is a very big project, and it's something that we wanted to know, that it has the blessing of the family, that this documentary must be into circulation.
Yeah. Well, we started preparations for filming. Let me just say that even though it may not please the family, we started preparations for the filming of this documentary without contact with the family members at all. The only time we spoke to his daughter, Ompi, was when we are now ready to start doing interviews.
Okay.
And luckily, well, you could see.
I think that's the right time to do it after you've done your pre-preparation.
Well, some people would say you start earlier because then
you may find a no.
Yeah, they might tell you don't do it, but this was going to happen with or without the family.
Blessing, yes, because it's not just it doesn't belong to them alone.
No,
it's a national asset.
No, it doesn't actually. Yes, that's true. So it was going to happen with or without the family. It just means that they're probably going to be very upset if they didn't like the final product. But yes, so contact was there, and luckily she was very suspicious to start with in the past, because I think of all the media coverage and all that. But when I explained to her, and also with Chama's help, what we were trying to do, she got somewhat comfortable, and then she gave us some names of other people that we could interview, because we already had a list. She was on the list. That's why we were talking to her.
Okay.
So yeah, ultimately she became a support. So she gave us names of the people we ended up interviewing, some of them that we had not yet put on our list.
Yes, I'm sure people are itching to say, you talked of 4th of July premiere.
4th of July is not about, and nothing to do with the American Independence Day, as people have been saying. This is Zambian Heroes Day. So
I know how clever you are.
And also, just to mention that no one funded the production of this. This
I was carrying to that.
Yes, no, this came entirely out of my own pocket. So all the money that we spent on this, we traveled to different places to go and carry out interviews. Like we went to Livingstone, we went to Namwala in Mala, and also we went to Monze to interview all sorts of different people. We went to Choma. It's all
just out
from
of
my
your
own pocket. Yeah,
this is passion, and you want to, like you say, you want to give him the position that he needs to have in the history of this nation. And there's so many stories, not just about Nkumbula, but a lot of stories that the filmmakers out there should also start focusing on. It's not about let me wait for funding. Look at how far you've gone, and look at the product that you have, and believe you me, this is going far.
It's a good product.
It's a good product.
I can say that.
And
I have made documentaries and films in the past where I'm sitting and just feeling kind of uncomfortable. Where you're sitting and you're cringing.
Not sure. Yes.
But this one, no. I'm
100% sure.
I've watched it like a minute. I edited it as well. Like
you eat, you sleep, you breathe. Then Nkumbula documentary.
For a month, I was actually even sleeping at the office to
make sure
get
that
it done because of the power cuts. At least at the office there was constant power.
Okay.
So it was something that we ran into problems in terms of getting financing for the premiere. Now I'm not talking about the production. The premiere was done. Yeah. But everywhere we went, people are just saying, Nkumbula, the tribalism issue, all this Tonga thing and all that. Sorry, we can't do that. Companies just refused, they don't want to get into that.
But do you have any VVIP arrangements? Have you invited people to come and...
Well, yeah, we have invited the vice president. It's yet to be confirmed, but I'm hoping she will come. Because, like I said, this is not about the government, it's not about Kaunda, it's about Nkumbula and the role he played in the liberation of the nation. Period.
That is all. And
so
you didn't mind whether this is an election period and there's a Tonga or anything?
Yeah, no, I'm Tonga, and he's Tonga, and that thing has been coming up frequently, and companies are just saying, look, we don't want to be especially that Kaunda refused to be interviewed for the documentary. So I don't know if that's part of the whole scheme, but he refused to be interviewed for the documentary, and I think he still wields a lot of power in this nation. So when people hear you're talking about somebody that is not Kaunda,
it becomes
yeah.
Okay. So let's make sure people come for this premiere. It's on the 4th
4th of July,
4th
which
of
is
July.
a Monday, the long
weekend.
The long weekend,
And the
yes.
tickets are going at
200 kwacha
200
each.
kwacha. Please come and see the history of Zambia. Those of you that have also got a passion for this man, come and see, so you get to learn more about Nkumbula and the history of Zambia. And bring your children along, please. Let us celebrate ourselves. Let us celebrate this big man. So
it has no rating, yes, so
yes.
they can bring their children.
Chris, I wish you all the best. This is a good project, and we just pray that after the premiere, you take it into schools, take it everywhere. You know, I know that's the plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes.
How it goes. Okay.
If people buy enough tickets, we'll have enough. We still need people to buy tickets in order to
continue
to finish clearing up, you know, some of the preparations that we need to do in relation to this. But I must say, yeah, we have the sales have been very good actually, because initially what we had done was we had 300 tickets printed, and just more than 200 are already gone.
Oh,
and,
that's good.
A lot of them people are already taken, and so we're just basically waiting. So I think we are in a good place now.
In a good place, you feel comfortable. Okay, so please come in numbers and support. Chris Mukkuli is one of Zambia's greatest filmmakers, and he's done one symbolic, important documentary about a son of Zambia, Nkumbula, Harry Mwanga Nkumbula. 4th July, 19 hours, 200 kwacha at Tekenico. Am I right? Chris?
That's correct.
It's been a pleasure. As
Thank you.
always, please just bring them projects here and to talk about them. I'm happy to host you. This has been Bridget Chibwe Malumba on Bring It On. Until next week. Bye-bye.